Because I love everything
Okay.
about the art, except for it says, like, these guys don't bathe and don't take care of themselves. I'm like, but they have all these bangles and braids in their beard. Who put them
Yeah,
there?
but they're probably gross.
Yeah, but, like, that requires some effort.
If I had a bangle, I could probably put it in my beard right now, and I haven't showered yet today.
Yeah,
So-
but you've showered in the span of time. Like, at one point in your life, you took one, right?
Hello there, I'm James.
And I'm Emme.
And welcome back to the Adventurers Pack show, the Bestiary, where we visit every single entry in the monster manual A through Z. And this week, Emmy, our subject of the week is...
The Ettin.
Yes, the Ettin. What happens when you take the concept of a giant, give it two heads, make it slightly orky, and hate itself, but also each other? Questions of identity and the self, and Descartes would have a field day if he encountered a creature with two heads that was 10 feet tall, I'm sure, if he survived the encounter. But yes, anyway. The Ettin.
Yes, the Ettin is a two-headed orc giant kind of thing with two separate personalities that typically hate each other. So whenever I personally am looking at a two-headed creature, the question primarily comes down to, is this one consciousness or two? And this is very definitively two separate consciousnesses with two separate names. And Ettin's name is both names said as one word. So I know the example in the book is Hargle Vargle. So you have Hargle and Vargle, and do not mix them up.
So, yeah, again, very much inspired, I think, by mythic depictions of the two-headed giant and very early explorations in human history of what is it to be a person and what is the self, what happens when you take two separate identities and put them in one body. Very much a microcosm of what it is to live with other people, because almost exclusively Ettins hate the other personality that they share a body with, and mostly all other Ettins. If two Ettins meet, it is either going to devolve into a shouting match between four heads, or they're there for a very explicitly detailed mating ritual, at least according to the Monster Manual.
You know, I know we've had past episodes where we've wanted more details on, like, okay, but how does this work? How do these creatures come into existence? I didn't necessarily want to know more about how Ettins interacted with each other, specifically vis-a-vis mating, but now I do, and I can't unknow it. So what happens in this instance is the female will go out and capture a male, and then they will go make a cave together and nest down for 6 months, during which time that's the length of the pregnancy, and he goes out and hunts food for her and then comes back, and then as soon as the baby's born, he's released, and as soon as the kid is able to take care of themselves even a little bit, the kid is kicked out too. So, and now you know.
Yeah. So, Ettins, unlike some other instances of monsters and races included in the D&D multiverse, are gender binary, and the body shared by these creatures is only ever going to be two of the same. So you're only ever going to get two male heads or two female heads. Might lead to even more complicated interactions, I think, if it were otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could probably... This is D&D. If the DM wanted to change that, you certainly could if you were looking to do something weird.
Yeah, there is literally nothing stopping you.
No, but it's not expressly written that way. You could do it that way, but this does bring up a really interesting point that I know we both looked at and saw, which is mostly this monster is kind of just funny.
Yeah.
They're just kind of hilarious. I mean, they're not unintimidating. They're a challenge rating 4. They've got a multi-attack. They've got 85 hit points. They're pretty standard bruiser, just gonna hit you really, really hard.
Challenge rating 4, big thing, hits you hard.
Yeah, you can't really sneak up on it. It's wakeful because one of its heads is always awake.
Only one of them is ever going to be asleep at any one time. It's got
So-
2 sets of eyes, 2 sets of ears.
Yeah, so they're generally just kind of always around, but I mean they're evil by nature, but mostly just because they're kind of selfish and territorial. They're not hyper aggressive or anything like that. So if one is guarding something, especially I know a lot of orcs will use these guys as guards, but they don't even really like the orcs, so usually the orcs are having to convince them to stick around anyway. You might be able to just talk your way around it or get it to argue with itself, or there's just a million different ways to get around this guy because they're just kind of funny.
Yeah, I actually really love the Ettin as a potential for, and we often talk about how creatures are more interesting than just what you would do to fight them. What does interacting with this thing in general look like? And there is so much potential for comic relief with the Ettin, because despite having 2 heads, they're very stupid. They have an intelligence of 6 and are so focused on arguing with each other because they do tend to have polar opposite personalities and wants and desires that an adventuring party that encounters them might be actually better served by trying to just get it to start arguing with them itself. And then just kind of leave while the Ettin is distracted.
It's a very viable strategy.
Just, if you've got your DM practicing a little bit of improv in terms of what 2 people in the same head arguing with each other might look like, this is a fantastic opportunity for a little bit of light-hearted enemy encounter.
This really is, I guess, fun for the DM now that you mention it. If you're gonna run one of these guys, you're gonna have just a fun little ball, because these guys are probably going to have very different voices, very different opinions, intonations. There's just, if you look at the art, the heads don't even particularly look alike.
Nope. They've even painted themselves, effectively opposite colors to distinguish themselves from one another. While they're still hairy, they both adorn themselves with these trinkets, both got those very orcish tusks. Even just in terms of the facial expressions, you can tell that those are 2 very distinct personalities. I almost think, and this is probably a bit of a stretch, that in the design of the art, they may have actually been drawn separately and then put together. Because I can almost see, and maybe this is just me internalizing the concept of it being 2 creatures in one body, but I can almost see like a line down the center of the art where I can see, yeah, that's that side and that's that side of the personality. Or maybe that's just the happy trail, I don't know.
Oh god, it is really present, isn't it? Yeah, I could see where, even if it wasn't done explicitly that way, it was done with that in mind, that the Ettin divides itself very much on space and economy, which also brings up the question of who controls what art. I have so many questions. But talking mostly about the art here, I've brought this up very rarely, but this is another one of those instances for me where I feel like the art's just a little nicer than most Ettins are. They're described in here as real gross, and I see some of the gross. Again,
some of the gross. Not as much gross as you might expect.
No, I would have liked more gross. It says that they almost never ever shower, but one of them's actually taken time to braid his beard, and the other one's put trinkets in his beard, which to me requires a lot of effort. But alternatively, I imagine if you were to see this in the wild in your imagination, that braid maybe was done when they were a little kid, and it's just kind of still that way, and it's probably maybe grosser than it looks in the book. I don't know.
There's a difference, and it is a crucial difference, between taking care of one's appearance and taking care of one's hygiene.
This guy does seem to care at least a decent amount. He's gathered a skull, gathered a bell. He's probably not going to sneak up on you. He's too big and loud and probably going to argue with you.
Honestly, I don't know if they'd have the presence of mind to sneak.
Well, and that again requires a certain level of coordination. I know I brought this up 30 seconds ago, but Who controls which leg? How do you sneak?
I always assume that it's like a direct split down the middle.
You could. This is another one of those moments where the DM could have a lot of fun. Like, what if the right head controls the left arm? What if you get into some weird...
Are we getting into the territory of our Ettins just actually playing Quap all the time?
Oh no! And then they're just... Oh, they kind of are, aren't they? Imagine having to coordinate walking with somebody you hate. Just walking.
I mean, we say that. It does explicitly say that while Ettins do hate each other within the same body, they are at least smart enough to know how to preserve their own survival. So, if there is a threat to them, they will work together to eliminate it. If they need to eat, they will, work together to find food.
Yeah.
So it's...
And it does say when they dedicate themselves to a task, if they both decide to do something, I imagine that could get into the territory of it actually being a little bit intimidating, where if they've both decided to do a thing, or if they have become dedicated to a cause or a place, they could actually start to get a little bit intimidating. If you combine, again, like these guys will stand outside orc encampments. Orcs view them as orcs for the purpose of their culture, or at least give or take, kind of, sort of, as cousins, more or less. So if you combine these guys with some angry orcs, this could get intimidating. But again, going to the comedy, I'm just imagining one of them deciding, okay, we're sitting down now.
On just one side, just going
blump. Oh, these guys are silly.
A little bit.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on The Bestiary. Have you ever grown a second head and gotten into an argument with it? Or have you actually just fought an Ettin? Either way, we'd really love to hear the tale about it down below in the comments. And while you're there, you can hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. You can hit the bell if you want notifications about when we upload new things. You can check out our social media links, and there's a link to our Patreon down there as well. We love our patrons so much. Everything we do is done through you, and we appreciate you with all of our heart. You can subscribe. You can check out some more of our videos here, and join us next week when we talk about the fairy dragon.